Hi everyone. Good evening. So we're going to be recording this for the benefit of those who can't actually make it this moment, but who registered and would like to watch the broadcast later on. So I'm just gonna show the agenda for today. And welcome to Techno Day on Ada Lovelace Day. So we have a much simpler day today compared to the one that we did back in March where we had 200 plus speakers. So I'm Jen Ashley and I am the founder of Techno Day. And today's agenda will be this. So I'm going to give a short talk about Techno Day, and then this could be a talk about leadership and about high performance teams and how to maintain them. Then it's going to be a tech talk again, an interesting one. I definitely loved hearing that talk. And then it's going to be followed by another talk about leadership and about managing a flat organization. And then the last talk will be about privacy and encryption. Again, another interesting talk. I mean, all of them are interesting. So I hope you enjoy them. So I'm Jen Ashley, and I do a lot of work in the community, the tech community in London and beyond. And yeah, I do a lot of work in diversity, equity, and inclusion space with a strong focus on women in tech. And the goal really is to get more women in technology. I'm on Twitter as Coder in Heels, and I'm also on Instagram as Coder in Heels, but I live mostly on Twitter. So yeah, these are some of the events that we've been involved with in the past. How I really got started was when I did my early retirement. I got involved with the London tech scene, and in most of the events that I've been to, the pictures typically like this. So there's a lot of attendees, but mostly men. For example, this was, I believe, an event, a React.js event at Facebook, and there were like 300 plus attendees, and there's probably like 5 or 6 women. Same thing when I attended an event in San Francisco for Apple's conference a few years ago. I saw some women there, so that's great. Happy to see them, but this is the picture that I took when we were going to the main hall. So it's a sea of men. So it's not representative of the population that they were building software or hardware for. So at the time, I said to myself, maybe I should just refocus my time, and energy and passion into getting more women in tech. And of course, the inspiration for that, one is Ada Lovelace, who is the first programmer who happened to be a woman. And why am I like doing this? Really, I just want to kind of help contribute in terms of changing the picture, because this is not the picture that we want anymore, where it's all male panels, all male speaker lineup, and we want to change that. This is one of my favorites is women's empowerment, but all the speakers were men. Here's another one of my favorites. Got a degree in mathematics, so I was laughing when I saw this, the women in math, but again, the panelists are all men. So what do we do in the organizations that I'm part of? I'm part of like different organizations, not just Techno Day. So Techno Day is just one of the things that I do, but we do a lot of events like this where we teach women how to code, for free. So for example, this was at Google. We were, I think, developing something for the Android watch, and this was developing something on the Apple Watch. We do a lot of hackathons and like summits like this, especially around in International Women's Day. I personally like teach as well sometimes, and I don't mind teaching in the dress. Like I present myself as I am. Like I don't want to change how I am just because I'm in technology. So this were one of the classes that I was teaching. So most of these women actually have not like coded before or have never built a web page before. So it's just great to actually see women, young women especially, who are gaining a bit of self-confidence in technology by being able to go from point A to point B, even with a simple thing like building a web page. But it's great to see that they're being inspired, and hopefully this workshops will encourage them to pursue a lot more advanced courses in the future. So again, yeah, some of the things that we've been doing in the past. And aside from these things that I've been doing before, in small measures, I thought of like building this Women in Tech conference, which is called Techno Day, which is what we're having now. So I started this back in 2017, and so it started in London, and I basically expanded it to Asia, in Taipei. And the plan before the pandemic was to expand it to other regions, but of course, that can't happen because we've been on lockdowns or whatever. We're still not out of this whole thing, and it's going to be coming up to 2 years. Soon. So yeah, I'm hoping that we'll be going back to in-person events pretty soon, because I'm missing it definitely. So this is probably like, I don't know, the seventh or eighth techno day. I have to actually count. Have to go back and count. So this was one of the slides that we used for the second year in 2018. I expanded that in Taipei, uh, with the goal again of expanding it to other regions once it's possible again. The event is always free, although one time we experimented in Taipei to charge for tickets, but I wasn't really happy doing that, because I'd like to maintain it to be a free event for women, so that the cost of attending the conference to talk to hear the talks and attend all the hands-on workshops is accessible, and the ticket cost is not a barrier for them to attend. Of course, we're dependent on sponsors to be able to do that, especially when we're doing physical events where there are things to pay, like venues, feeding people. For example, the last in-person event, we had 1,800 attendees, all women. So yeah, that's of course a big crowd to feed, and sometimes you can give swags depending on how much sponsorship we get. But the goal really is to just cover the cost in terms of like maintaining a small team, as I said, keeping the event free, as well as being able to provide workshops. Sometimes we have like 40 plus workshops for in-person events, so that's a lot. And we do need like a big physical space, which is not free. We pay for that, so yeah, we do need a lot of support from sponsors. Okay, these are just some of the for example, the workshops that we offer on the day. This is a small subset of what we've been doing the past few years. And aside from the conference, I also started a Women in Tech scholarship, where we teach women how to code. And yeah, it can be like on different things. For example, we started with Swift. And we're hosted basically by some companies. For example, like for this one, it was Net-a-Porter. So they hosted us, I believe, for 12 weeks. And we were basically, yeah, so we're basically there every week. With, I believe, yeah, so this was like the first batch of women that we were teaching then. They ended up completing in 12 weeks. Of course, we're helped by a lot of volunteer mentors as well. And this is something that we'd like to continue once we're back to in-person events again. Okay. So why am I doing this? I can just be out there enjoying my life and maybe shopping or traveling or whatever, when we're able to travel again. I still do that. I still travel and do a bit of shopping here and there. But I really want to just be able to kind of contribute and turn that dial. Because the evidence is growing that there is a business case for diversity. It does affect the bottom line. And if we're not going to do this now, when are we going to do it? We of course cannot change our past, but we can always improve our future. And we just need to keep moving forward. And we know we can do it as women, but it's important as well that allies actually help us with this, because this is not just a problem that we women need to solve. This is, I think, everyone's problem to address, and not just in technology, but in other areas as well. So thank you, and as I said, there'll be like 4 other talks, and I'd like to get on and queue up these presentations because they are really good, and I really hope you will enjoy them.
Hi everyone, my name is Ada Kelly and I'm a Senior Manager of Development at Genesis. Today I'm going to talk to you about evolving high performance teams and how to maintain them. Certainly in software, the key to a successful project lies with the people. And whether the team is a new one or an old one, everyone needs to understand why the team is so important. Henry Ford famously said, "Working together is success." I find myself often saying to my own team, let's avoid a solo run here. So in June last year, I came across this second quote. I found it interesting. It was by the co-founder of LinkedIn, Reid Hoffman. He was talking about why relationships matter. And he said, no matter how brilliant your mind or strategy, if you're playing a solo game, you'll always lose out to a team. The experience of working within a team varies hugely. In fact, you could say they're all unique. They depend on the individuals that are part of it, the company culture, the personalities, the goals, the variables are almost endless. And when brought together, create a very unique experience on a daily basis. Working on a dysfunctional team where you feel like every day you are treading a tightrope, afraid to speak up, it's vastly different to one which is high performing, successful. This brings satisfaction, motivation, and the best results. That is why I think that it is so important to recognize what a high performing team is, how to foster, cultivate, support the development of one, and how to maintain it, of course. Today, I hope to cover these areas for you with some ideas. So what is a team that is deemed a high-performing one? What are the characteristics that you can look for to identify and build one? It's a team that's led with clarity towards shared goals and a common purpose. Those goals that are met in a predictable fashion. It's a group of individuals with their own areas of expertise and skill sets that complement each other. That can, but also, when needed, their roles are somewhat interchangeable. They can swap their roles and responsibilities to some degree. Diversity of experience and background of the team is valued. It's a presentation all of itself, but unconscious bias can play a part here. Recently in Genesis, I have taken on a very enlightening training on this area, and I recommend it. It's a group of people that are not reliant on any one leader. A high-performing team can move this leadership role around the members, depending on the task or the goal. Leadership is shared. It's a democratic experience. The team themselves, they're self-governing, self-organizing. It's the team they're not always looking for direction from outside. However, they know exactly when they do need to seek guidance from those that are the stakeholders of the projects that they're working on. Barriers, blockers, this team identifies them quickly and either moves them out of the way or works around them. Conflict, it's harnessed, it's leveraged to produce the most optimal solutions rather than a reason for the team to fail. Communication in a high-performing team is excellent. It leads to excellent collaboration and therefore results. Certainly, results are a clear indication of a high-performing team, but also there's accountability for achieving those results. What does it feel like? Members of a high-performing team are motivated. There is high energy amongst them. So how do we build one of these? What are the stages of team development? According to this theory that I share, there are at least 4 phases. The forming, storming, norming, performing model of group development was first proposed by Bruce Tuckman in the 60s. He said these phases were not only necessary, but also inevitable in order for a team to grow, to face their challenges, to find their solutions, to plan work, to deliver results. In the 70s, he did add a 5th stage, I haven't added it here, named adjourning, which is the phase where a team disbands for whatever reason. Perhaps the project they worked on is coming to an end, for example. So the first phase here is forming. So the team meets for the first time. They're now going to work together on a common goal. This stage, I often think, is like the honeymoon phase. So the team needs to emerge, however, as its own entity. So in software, when Scrum teams are formed, they often christen themselves, give themselves a name to identify the team. And also a mascot is often chosen. You see here, I have members of a Connacht rugby team, a local sports team that we have here, and they're all dressed in the same kit. However, individuals in this phase, they continue to work very much independently at first. There's politeness and pleasantries. The work is new and fresh often. Perhaps this helps, but everyone tends to get along nicely. So what could go wrong? To progress to the next stage, the team needs to start to feel comfortable with each other and comfortable with the chance of disagreeing on topics. They will, with time, move on to the next stage, which is storming. So it's not surprising that this phase, storming, is there, as the tendency to work independently will lead to inter-team competition. So storming is inevitable, but it's very important, as the team learns during the storming phase how to sort out their disagreements and what works for them to do that. They start to gain each other's trust, which is a key characteristic of a high-performance team that I will discuss in detail later. There are teams that never emerge from this storming stage, unfortunately. As you can imagine, there's a lot at play as members learn about each other's personalities, their values in more depth. And they might never agree, or at least they might never find a way out of this stage, progress through it. This is where good facilitation in meetings and strong leadership can help to bring the team through. Moving out of the storming stage is a mindset change for the team members. Conflict starts to be viewed as healthy. Tolerance of each other's tendencies and personalities emerges, and respect builds. The next stage occurs at a point when there is acceptance for each other's ways. If this was a recipe I was telling you, you could see how time is not an ingredient that can be swapped out. And it's with time and experience of working through tasks to a common goal that members of a team can together progress to norming, where disagreements are resolved and heated debate results in an even closer bond and trust and ultimately better solutions. norming phase, as per the name suggests, it's where a team norms are established in how they collaborate, how they function. So this leads us to performing. And now the team is reaching its crescendo. During the performing phase, the common goals, they're not only met, but with high levels of success and predictability. So how do you develop and support the progress of a team through these stages of team development to become or to emerge as that high-performing team we want? So, ensuring a team can progress through the stages, one can at times this process find it very difficult. However, the benefits, they're so worthwhile. Improving the working experience of people with improved morale, enhanced productivity and results. Here I have a pyramid showing this list of key areas to focus on. It's adapted from the list applying to dysfunctional teams in the book by Patrick Lencioni, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. So these, in his view, are key behaviors or areas every team needs to succeed. Trust, conflict, commitment, accountability, and results. So let's go through this pyramid in detail. We'll do a deep dive. So trust, the foundation of teamwork. It's all about vulnerability. At the foundation of our pyramid here, it's not a coincidence. It's at the bottom because it lays the foundation for all the others to work appropriately. The only effective method for teams to build trust and cohesion is to do real work, and time should be given for this to be accomplished. In fact, time and doing the real work with good leadership is how a team will build up on all the characteristics listed here. If trust is given enough time to be developed, the team will progress smoothly through the different stages of team formation that we just spoke about. Next on our pyramid is conflict. And this one definitely requires trust. The greatest waste of time is avoiding conflict. Please don't. Conflict can be harnessed, leveraged, and in my own view, it can have as its outcome the best solutions possible. In a team with a lot of trust, shared criticism is known to be given with the best of intentions and delivered constructively. Conflict allows engagement and passionate debate. In fact, warning, if there's no conflict, then there are issues to be addressed, such as the lack of psychological safety. People should feel comfortable challenging each other, challenging the status quo without any repercussions. Communication, although not mentioned here, is so important at all levels of this pyramid. Two-way communication as well. So active listening is as vital as sharing views and information. Next up in our pyramid, we have commitment. So you need to ensure before commitment is made to deliver work that there are limited unknowns that are unavoidable. Those that are unavoidable are then treated with a view to research their solutions, rather than an expectation set on delivering unknown solutions. Clarity and buy-in is what commitment looks like, even through disagreement. Minimize the work in progress, making commitments more achievable. Then there's accountability. This must occur directly among the peers. It delivers purpose, so it's very important. When a goal is set by a team, they should then expect to be held accountable to ensure they have that sense of achievement at the end. We and our teams in Genesis discuss outcomes regularly in retrospective meetings and bring accountability. Finally, at the top of our pyramid, we again discuss results, and a great team accomplishes results it sets out to achieve. Clear, realistic objectives set ensures the team knows exactly what they're working towards and how this contributes to the overall success of the business. Having clear goals and objectives allows the team to measure their results. Clear vision and goals, again, it's a Genesis example, but our values and our business goals at Genesis are very clear, but also very limited. So we're asked to fly in formation behind just a few that are well thought out. And they help us make decisions on a much, much lower level on a daily basis. Our work is always based on priorities also. Our expectations are well aligned. So you have now a high-performing team. How do you keep them there? How do you maintain this momentum that they have? Next, I'll share some ideas. Challenge the team. Of course, find a balance, but driving ambitious results keeps a team sharp, motivated to continuously learn and improve the way they work and also what they deliver. With peer recruitment, enable that team to be part of the hiring process for new members. Very important is to give a team space and freedom, empowerment. At Genesis, we have guardrails in place in our software architecture and processes, which then allows this freedom to play, making our teams more inclined to take risks. This delivers on innovation. Failure, it should be embraced, and it is here at Genesis. It's a learning opportunity. Sharing amongst teams the causes of failures and the possible solutions to avoid them in the future. This is key to the success of any software. A willingness without hesitation to share the learnings from failure. Another idea is to keep those engineering teams small. Here at Genesis, we strive to keep our engineering team sizes no more than 7 or 8, and this definitely helps. Feedback loops are present in all major frameworks that I'm familiar with, such as Scrum, Kanban. There's good reason for that. With clear expectations and vision, a team can then, on a recurring basis, reflect on how successful they were. They should, of course, take time to celebrate the achievements, but equally as important is reflection on how they work, why they may have failed, why results were not in line with what they expected. Retrospective meetings allow the team in a safe space to discuss the challenges they encountered. What made them frustrated? How can this be addressed? Blockers to team productivity can be highlighted in these discussions. Ideation on solving them occurs during retrospective meetings. Fear can hinder a team's success, and fear of the unknowns, when discussed with your peers in these meetings, alleviate it. A trouble shared is a trouble halved, they say. If retrospective meetings are done properly, open and honest conversations are held. They're one of the great builders of psychological safety for the team. During the norming phase, bad habits can develop in processes or team behaviors, and when how a team works is reflected on, these can be recognized and then addressed. Finally, on this slide, I have culture. We work so hard at Genesis, maintaining a great culture at all levels of the organization. This culture we're proud to say, is an inclusive one. All levels of our organization has a voice, from my experience. Learning is encouraged. Continuous growth of a person's development is encouraged. And I would say, since I joined, the word at times I would describe us as is humble. This and the emphasis on finding a great work-life balance, it ensures a healthy culture. So in summary, the process of creating a high-performing team, it can be very difficult. However, the benefits are well worth it for the organization and for the individuals that make up those teams. As a manager, be flexible in how a team have decided to communicate. Allow them to find the most effective way. Give the team enough freedom to find their own trust, the most important grounding part of our pyramid. Ensure the team have what they need to succeed, providing them with an environment and a culture that supports them. Finally, it's very important to have fun and laugh together whenever you have the opportunity. Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Andrada Oltanu, and I'm a proud data scientist in Dava. And today I am going to be talking to you about my favorite subject in the whole world, which is data visualization. So people are extremely visual, meaning that we like to see color, patterns, and things moving that we can interact with them. Hence, the information that they are trying to provide to us sinks much deeper than just by reading plain text, for example. And today in this presentation, I'm going to hopefully show you how you can integrate that within data science and data visualization, and how to elevate your graphs in order to make them much more interactive and intriguing to the user. So let's get started. First, I would like to draw a baseline from where we are going. So myself as a data scientist, in the past years, I have been using a handful of tools in order to create my visualizations. First, I learned how to use Excel, which is the basic of the basics. You don't really need much knowledge about it, and it's very simple and very straightforward. Then I started using Matplotlib. This is when I also started to learn Python and the libraries within it. So this was the first visualization library I learned within Python and data science. Then it's Seaborn, which is the big brother of Matplotlib, if you want. Seaborn helps elevate the graphs that are already created in Matplotlib, add them color, interactivity, and they are very nice in general. And then if you want to get a little bit further, you can use Plotly. This is where you want to kind of dress to impress, but the code in general is a little bit more hard to be done. Now let's see a proper example of a chart that was created using some of these tools. So I hope you like music and songs in general, because we are going to go down through a music lane together today. So this is a bar chart, a very simple bar chart that shows the frequency of registered bird songs throughout the years. So in 1 year, there were a number of bird songs that were registered from multiple species of birds around the globe. And this is the bar chart. It's extremely simple, and it's been done in Excel. So it's very straight to the point. You can understand the information. However, if you want to add a little bit more customization, it's going to be a little bit more complicated, and you don't have much room with it. Hence, I'm going to try using Matplotlib instead. So moving to Python and Matplotlib, in just 2 lines of code, very straightforward, I am creating the same bar chart. Now, this bar chart needs a little bit of work. For example, on the x-axis, as you may see, the years are kind of overlapping one to each other, and we need to fix that. Then we might want to enhance the x and y axis and maybe change the color of the bars to make them more interesting. And very quickly and easily, in 2 more lines of code, we can do that. And now the bar chart is accurate. To add a little bit more information about it, we can also add very quickly a title or a title for the X and Y axis. And now, by looking at it, you could say the bar chart is done. It provides all the information that you need to know. However, if you are a little bit extra and you want to add a little bit of something, I usually like to do that. So in this case, I Googled a little bit and I found this beautiful watercolor bird that also matches the color scheme of the bars. And I added that to the graph. So now we have also a representative image that kind of shows what's about the bar chart, and everything is very seamless and integrated. And now this bar chart is complete. You can show it to your coworkers, your spouse, your child, it doesn't matter. Everybody and anybody could understand the information behind it. But what can you do when you want to take it a step further? And this has been my question in the past year. So I'm going to take you with a story time. So I have been a data scientist for 2 years, and data visualization has been the thing I've been most passionate about. And I have tried and mastered all these tools that I have been talking to you about. But at some point, I kind of hit a point where I couldn't improve anymore my graphs. So I started wondering, what can I make and what can I use to make my graphs even better? What can I use to make them more fun? How can I add more complexity to them? How can I make them react and interact with the user? How can I make them as customizable as possible? How can I make them unique and atypical? And lastly, how can I make them shareable and as user-friendly as possible? And I started digging and looking. And this year in January, I won the 3rd place in a Kaggle competition. So naturally, I started looking at what other people did. And the notebook that won the 2nd place had these amazing, beautiful visualizations, the most amazing things I have ever seen, ever. And the guy that did them used D3. Okay, so I'm going to be very real with you. At first, I panicked. And I panicked because I was looking at the code and I couldn't understand anything, because in my data science life, I've never seen something like that ever before. And on one hand, I was like amazed. These visualizations are so beautiful. But on the other hand, I was like terrified of the technicalities of the code. So I panicked and I ran away very quickly and then came back a few months later, which was a mistake. And this presentation is hopefully going to show you that you don't have to repeat that same mistake that I did. D3 is not a dragon that cannot be slayed. It's actually, although it might not seem, very accessible. And beyond that point, it's really worth the effort, because the things that you can create using D3 are much more extraordinary than the kind of leap that you need to take at the beginning. So let me show you what I mean. First, let's talk a little bit about what is D3. So very plainly put, D3 is a library for data manipulation that uses JavaScript. And this is where everything kind of broke for me, because I've been talking to many data scientists, and apparently not many, almost none of them, knew JavaScript. As data scientists usually use Python or R and never JavaScript. So this looked a little bit complicated to me. However, as I'm going to show you, it's nothing to worry about. So now I want to show you the official page of D3 and maybe look a little bit into it and how to navigate through it. So D3 was created by Mike Bostock. He is the father of D3. And this is the official page. And you're going to find some very interesting tools here. So first of all, this is the cover of the page, which is amazing in my opinion. And you can see here different examples of charts that were created by the community in D3. So for example, I don't know, let's look at this one and maybe look at this one, and let's see another one too. And you can come here and see the code and also some very beautiful visualizations that can be done. It's extremely versatile. You can do really anything with D3, and you can create anywhere on any platform as much as you want. So here are some cute examples to kind of get you going. Besides that, you can click here onto examples. And in here, you can see, are going to come to observable. I'm going to talk a bit about observable in a second. But here is a very useful page where you can, for example, let's say you want to build a chloropleth of the US map. You can come on here, click on it, and then you can use the code created especially for this baseline chart, and then you can start building on it. So the gallery is extremely useful. A few more things here. So here is the documentation if you want to get a little bit more in depth using in the GitHub page. And then lastly, what I want to highlight is this line of code here. So this line of code is used in order to be able to access the D3 library. So exactly like you'd say in Python, import pandas or import sklearn and stuff like that, you can also click and copy this line of code, and you're going to have access to the D3 functions. This one uses the latest version, which is version 7. However, if you want to use earlier versions like 6 or 5 is totally fine. You can just change that number there and you're good to go. Before going any further, I would like to take a moment to talk just a very little tiny bit about technicalities. I don't want to bore you to death, but when I first saw the multitude of things that you can create with D3, I was like, but how? how could you do that? So there are a few things that you need to know, starting with D3. First of all, you'll need to have some basic knowledge of HTML. Not a lot, though, but D3 creates graphs in a web page. So you need to create that skeleton web page with HTML. It's just a few lines of code, nothing more, and once you have that skeleton in place, you don't really have to know much about it. So very basic HTML knowledge. Then you might need to know CSS. CSS is extremely helpful because you want to customize your charts and your visualization. And to do that, you need CSS. But you don't have to know it by heart, just because there is a lot of documentation out there about CSS, and many people that already have done that what you might need. So you can go ahead and just copy those people and, of course, reference them. And then you will need JavaScript. So in JavaScript, you will do the bulk of work, the magic behind D3. However, you don't have to know a lot of JavaScript, just the JavaScript that you will need for D3 itself. So you don't have to learn a completely new programming language. This is what I thought I had to do at the beginning, but it's not the case, because you can do the pre-processing and preparing the data in Python or R or whatever language you're comfortable with, and then go into the JavaScript part and D3 part once you have everything in place and just create the visualization there. So very basic knowledge, intermediate knowledge on JavaScript. Besides that, you will need an environment. So in this case, I used Visual Studio. You can go ahead and install it. It's very simple. But if you want to use something on the internet, you can use Observable. So Observable is a notebook sharing scheme created and designed especially for D3. So in there, you can code much easier, you can access libraries much more easier, and then you can create a visualization, and it's very useful and much quicker, let's say, because you can also fork other people's work. I'm going to get to that in a second. And lastly, what I've thrown in here is because, or at least I feel like I haven't found many resources on courses on D3. And this is a course I have done. If you want, it's not necessarily, but you can check out this course. It's Mastering Data Visualization in D3 on Udemy. It's very well structured. It's starting from setting up the environment and installing everything to creating some basic shapes, then creating the actual chart, and then going even further with the D3 magic and creating the absolute amazingness that you're going to see in a second. So I highly recommend that course. Okay, so let's stop talking for a little bit and see what D3 is all about. So this one is an example, a very interesting example. I have left the link in the presentation, and I'm going to open it right here. So this is a notebook created by Bartosz. I think I'm pronouncing his name right. And if you're already familiar with Jupyter Notebooks, it's exactly the same. So you have a markdown file where you can, for example, here have some text. If you click here and then you press pin down, you can see the text. And this is the header, and then again, some more text. And then here is the chart that I am going to show you. There are many more charts, and you can do multiple charts in one notebook. Nobody says you can't. But this is the thing I wanted to show you. So right from the start, you already notice that something is different than from what we've already seen in Matplotlib, Seaborn, and so on. You don't see the chart. So there is a playfulness here because we have a start button. So this chart will show the lifespans of 41 songs after they reached the top of Spotify charts. So how long has the hit stayed within the top charts on Spotify? So I'm going to place start. And you can see these shapes, like these spirals, folding as the songs appear. And then here is the number of days they stay within the tops. Once they go gray, it means that they dropped down after a few days. And you can see they are unfolding very, very, very nicely and beautifully. And afterwards, at the end, as the chart kind of stops, you have here a very cool button that says transform into a bar chart. And you can click here and very seamlessly, so very seamlessly, everything kind of reorders into this very, very, very clean bar chart where you can show, let's say, much more, where you can see much more in depth the comparisons between the songs. What I also like about this is that, for example, if you're scrolling and I don't know, Calvin Harris, One Kiss, maybe I don't know this song, you can click on it and it opens a separate browser when you of the song within Spotify. So you can actually listen to it. And you can do this with all the songs. Like, in my opinion, this is very, very cool. And then you can also go back to that radial chart format, which is, again, in my opinion, a very interesting shape in itself. Now, if you want to see how Bartosz did it, you can, again, pin down and you have access to the entire code that he used to create this chart. So nothing is left with a question mark. If you scroll down, you're going to see multiple charts and you can explore that later. I highly recommend it. It's absolutely incredible. And for each chart, again, you're going to pin down and then you're going to see all the code. The last thing I want to show you here is that if you go into the appendix section, right at the bottom, you see here data. And here you can see the structure of the data that was input, and you're going to find out that it's just a simple CSV file. So it's just a simple CSV file with a few columns named artist, name, when it premiered, first appearance, week, streams, and so on. The cool thing about this is that if we pin down, you can see that we can change the CSV file. So for example, if you have another CSV file, maybe from a different period in time, with the exact same structure, and you append it in this notebook, and then you might need to do a few little tweakments, but very small, you can end up with the exact same graph without having to start from zero. And this, in my opinion, is the power of the community within D3. So after I saw what you can be able to do in D3, I was like, I don't know if I can happily and peacefully go back to what I've been using so far. So I want to share with you the 4 reasons, in my opinion, D3 is absolutely incredible. And if you want to master data visualization, you should try it at least. So first of all, you aren't restricted anymore to just the basic format of the charts. Bar charts, pie charts, box plots. You can do unique shapes like we've seen with the radial chart, or whatever shapes that you want to create much more easily. So your imagination can roam freely without having to doubt about anything, because you can do anything really. You can build upon someone else's work. So again, you don't have to start from zero. You can use observable and other people's work in order to create something unique and your own. But again, I'm just going to put it out there. Reference, please, everybody and all your resources. Interactivity encourages play. Because the graphs are playful and move, it encourages the user to find out and discover more about it. In that process, they also understand more about the information behind it. And in my opinion, that's the most important. That you need to give them time and curiosity in order to find out deeper meanings and information behind the visualization and the chart. And lastly, my favorite, I think, endless possibilities to make it unique. Meaning that with CSS, you can do whatever you want. For example, if it's Christmas and let's say you want to do a bar chart, and instead of bars, you want to put candy. And whenever you hover your mouse over the candy, you want them to spin. And then snow is falling from the sky. And then you have maybe Santa playing in the back a carol or something. You can do it. You can do anything you want. And this is the most exciting part about D3, in my opinion. Okay, so the last part of this presentation, I would like to show you a concrete example of how you can build a D3 chart on your own. Because I've shown you many things and many possibilities, but I usually, within a presentation, if I find something new, I would like to also know, just to have a little bit of an idea at least, on the how aspect. How are we going to create these charts? So we are going to go back to the board chart we've done before. I hope you didn't forget about it. So we are going to try to recreate that board chart and add something extra. So first of all, we want to create the X and Y axis in D3. D3 works exactly like all the visualizations that you might have used before, meaning that we are going to build as we go. So first, we are going to do the axis. In this case, I'm going to do the x-axis, which is a scale band. A scale band means that the x-axis is categorical. We have years, but these are categorical variables. Whereas on the y-axis, I'm going to have a scale linear, meaning frequencies. So we have frequencies on the y-axis, meaning these are numbers. So I want them to be linear. And then I want to group them. Transform translate means that I'm going to kind of put them wherever I want in the area. And then I'm going to call for x-axis, axis bottom, meaning I want it to be the bottom axis. And then Y, I want to be on the left. And here, I'm also doing a little bit of tweaking, and I'm saying, okay, select all my text and rotate it 50 degrees in order for the ears to not overlap and be clean and be seen very, very easily and correctly. Afterwards, we need to append the rectangle. So what is really a bar chart? A bar chart is rectangle that has the length of the y-axis, the frequency, for each x variable in time, which is kind of the width. So in this case, I'm creating a variable called rectangles, and then I'm saying dot data, meaning in D3 language, dot data is when you say for all observations within the data set, do the following. So for each observation here, it works like a for loop almost. I want to append the rectangle. I want to position it where I want to be transformed. And then I want the y, so the length of the rectangle, to be my frequency, and then the x to be assigned to the ear I am talking about. And then Alex and RY are two little very interesting attributes I found out, where you can kind of round the bars, not be so squared shape, which is an effect I personally like. And then I applied the fill color, meaning I made the bars a light sky blue color. In order to make it almost exactly how it looked when we left it the last time, I needed to do a few more things. So first of all, I added a title here, and then a title for the y-axis here. And this is very easy. You append some text to the area of the chart. You mention the coordinates where you want it to be placed. And then some few little attributes, for example, the size of the text, the font weight if you want to make it more bolder or simpler. And also you say what text you want to be put in there. And for the Y label is exactly the same, but I rotated it 90 degrees to be on the vertical axis on the Y. So everything looks perfect. I also added off camera the bird image. And here I also added the gradient. So in this case, I didn't want them to be blue all over, but I said, okay, the base color here on the bottom should be blue, and then I want on the top to fade into a pinkish reddish color. So it forms this very beautiful gradient, which is done in a few lines of code. Very, very simple, very, very beautiful. So we are left with the bar chart that we have created before. So what can I do in D3 very quickly and easily to add a little bit of something more? And I'm going to show you something very interesting. So in this case, what I did is I added some interactivity to the chart. And I'm going to pause a little bit and explain what I have done here. So whenever I am moving the cursor, my mouse, over a particular bar, I want some things to happen. So in this case, when I mouse enter into my rectangle, I want a few things. First of all, I want the user to be able to clearly see that they are on some bar. So I want the bar to be very different from the others. Hence, what I did is I decreased the opacity to 30% in here. And then I increased a little bit the width and the height of the bar to make it a little bit more bigger than the rest of them. This is the first thing I did. Then the second thing is I added a line, because by looking with your naked eye, you can't really see where the frequency, where the value on the y-axis lies. So by adding a line, it's much easier for the user to notice and compare. So I added a line on top of each bar once you have placed your mouse over it. And then the last thing I did is, so usually in a Matplotlib bar chart, you would add the values on the bars on top of them. But this would make the bar chart a bit overcrowded. So what I did here is I added a label. So I added a label in this area of my code where I say next to the cursor, the mouse, the pointer, I want to show a label that shows the exact frequency number of how many songs were registered in that year. So all these interactivities that I have added are elevating the bar chart. So we've moved from a very simple, quick, and easy bar chart in Excel to an intermediate version in Matplotlib to a much more interactive, playful bar chart in D3. And in my opinion, in my humble opinion, the D3 bar chart has all the attributes. It checks all the characteristics or criteria, if you may, that the chart or data visualization needs to have. It has playfulness, it has interactivity, it is beautiful. In my opinion, this is a criteria. And lastly, it makes the user have two feelings. So first of all, it gives them clarity because, okay, I understand the information that the chart is trying to provide to me. But it also gives them curiosity. The curiosity of exploring, of trying to maybe move around and find more complexity and what other features are added within the graph. And also curiosity that stays behind the data. What's happening in this year? Or why is the trend going this way? So concluding, I feel like D3 is the most amazing tool that you can use to create your data visualization. And hopefully I got you even just a little bit excited to explore and understand it. And I would like to thank you so much for listening and have a great, wonderful day and the rest of the conference. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for having me today. I know the whole flat Earth thing is quite a topic these days, but that's actually not what I'm here to talk about. What I am here to talk about is building a flat organizational structure. And I'm the CEO and the co-founder of the @Company. And when Kevin and Colin and I started the @Company, we set out to build a really different type of company. And I just want to give you a little background on the company because I think that's important as to why we decided to do a flat organizational structure. So what we're doing is we're trying to flip the internet. So if you think about the way the internet is today, each company has its own database of your data, right? You've got to go log into each company and maintain your data on their database. And they have to protect your data. If somebody gets in, they get not just your data, but everybody else's data as well. And so this is the architecture of the internet today. And this is crazy. I mean, nobody would architect a system this way. So we want to flip this. And we want people to own their own data and for apps to log in to you. And you give permission as to whether somebody has your data and for how long they have it. And you can take it away as well. So all the apps in this environment are all peer-to-peer, and it opens up some really fun, interesting applications. So this is a very different way of doing things. And as a company, what we want to do is put people at the center of things. So we want on the internet for all people to be treated with respect, have their freedoms, and own their own data. So as such, we felt like we need to figure out how to do that as a company for employees as well. And not just employees, but anybody who works with us. And so what we wanted to do was empower people to own their own destiny and to do what really excites them and to grow in ways that they never felt possible before. So that's why we decided a flat organizational structure was the one for us. So I want to give you a little background about me and my journey. I've been in the computer industry for over 30 years. When I started in the industry, there were not a lot of women leader role models. And the women who had made it to the top were just tough as nails. And they were very alpha. They could go toe to toe with any guy in the room. And that's not me. That's not my style. That's not how I do things. And so I thought, I will never be in a leadership role in the computer industry. But I had a real natural aptitude for the technology, and I love marketing. And so I ended up working my way up, running companies. And it's funny because people say, you're either a leader or a follower, but I don't think that's true. I think there's a third category. There's people like me who are not good at following, but I don't really understand. I didn't understand leadership because I wasn't a good follower. So I think to be a good leader, you have to be a good follower as well. So I've spent my entire career studying leadership and trying to understand it better. So I blog about this because it helps me understand it better. But I do have one really good role model in my life, and that is one of my dogs. So I had 3 rescue pit bulls, and people may think pit bulls are scary, but they actually all have different personalities. For example, the one in the middle is a complete beta dog. He will follow anybody, just tell him what to do, he's fine. The one at the top, Toa, unfortunately just passed away, but he is insecure, aggressive, and so he's really afraid of other dogs, and so becomes very aggressive just to try to put up a front so he'll be okay. And it's funny, a lot of people actually do that as well. But Gemini is calm, confident. She came from a happy home. She other dogs just look to her immediately because she makes them feel safe. And so she is the type of leader that I would like to be. So someday I'll grow up to be like her. So when we first started down this path, we needed to come up with what our core values were in our company culture. And the way we do this is we start a Google Doc and everybody chimes in on what they think it is. And then we had a meeting to go through the doc and kind of wordsmith things. And so now we have a doc that says what our core values and what our company culture is. And it was really fun this last summer when our interns started, because each person spoke about one of our core values that resonates with them. And I wish I'd recorded it. Unfortunately, I didn't. But it's just really great to see everybody owning the core values of the company. So these are living documents. These will change as we grow, but it's a great place to start. And it's a great way for people to have an understanding of what we're driving for, and that's how they make decisions. And I think the decision process is super interesting in our company. And the reason for that is my last company, we would make a decision, and it may have been based on technology or financially driven. We didn't have the resources or some other reason. And then we would, a couple of years later, revisit that decision and go, well, why did we make that decision? And we'd spend a lot of time just revisiting a decision that we'd made because we couldn't remember why we made it. So at the ad company, we log all of our decisions. And so I think this process, even if you don't want to do a flat organization, I think this is a really interesting process anyway, because what it does is people do a decision log, and this is kind of what it looks like. It's a 1-page, really simple format. And then they post it in a group chat and say, I want to make the decision by this date, so give me feedback before then. And people comment, they add reasons for the decision. It's really important that we solicit dissension, and I think this is I think this is super important in any company, and I see this in our society today. People are not allowing differing opinions in, and you learn so much from somebody differing with your opinion. I think it's great, and so we really want to solicit dissension on these decision logs. And then decisions made, and sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong. As long as we correct quickly, we can always move on. So, but they're made out in the open, so everybody knows why the decision was made, and I think that's really useful. So there were several opportunities, challenges when we first started this, and people would ask, who do I report to? Who gives me approval? How should I spend my time? Who does the hiring? Who does the firing? Who does the budgeting? And so now we use the decision logs, and everybody can do the hiring. But the one thing I haven't done yet is figured out how to do the budgeting. That's still a work in progress. And another challenge that I had was vocabulary around this. Trying to develop a vocabulary that people can understand and relate to, and actually makes them feel like they're driving the show. So instead of saying something like, hey, figure out how you can best contribute, I should have said something like, look, we hired you because we believe in your judgment, and so you tell me how you can best contribute. And the other thing is the people, because not everybody's going to be able to work in an organization like this. So you really need people who are self-starters, independent thinkers, and natural collaborators. And the other thing that is really important is diversity, because I think the diversity of thoughts and opinions give you just so much more perspective on what you're trying to do. And just to give you a simple example of that, we had a messaging company working with us to kind of come up with what our overall messaging was. And we're the founders are Silicon Valley people. We've been in the Valley for years, and so we were working with them on this messaging, and Chris, who's from the UK, says, well, that just sounds like Silicon Valley BS. And we went, oh, well, I never thought of it that way, but you're right. So just having differing opinions from around the world is huge. And we're a virtual company, so we can do that. So the other important thing is the board. You can't do something like this without a supportive board. And luckily, we do have a fabulous board. They are independent thinkers. They question the status quo, and they really want to contribute to the future of work. And so they're just amazing. But what I struggled with the board is I've always done board meetings, with bringing in department heads and then have them present what they're doing in their department and what their accomplishments and what they're going to do next month. And so doing this in a flat organization was, how do you do that? Do you bring everybody in from the company? So what we decided was everybody who wants to present to the board can, and they can present their project, and here's the format that they use to present their project. And so on Monday, before the board meeting, we bring everybody in, and we go over all the presentations. We'll weed out a lot of it because we can't fit everything in, but pick the ones to present, and then that's what happens at the board meeting. And so the very first time we did this, I was amazed because I felt like we covered things in so much more depth than we had before, and yet we finished early. So it was super interesting for me. The other really interesting thing about this was the team members a lot of people who would never be presenting to a board normally got very excited about presenting to the board and really felt even more ownership of what they were doing by presenting it to the board. So I think it was really good for some people. It depends on what motivates you, but for some people it was fabulous. So that was one of the wonderful side effects that came out of all of this. So what have we learned? So one of the things that I know is it does take an adjustment period when we hire somebody to adjust to this type of structure or lack thereof of structure. And old habits die hard. So it's really easy to just go, well, this is the way I've always done things, instead of saying, oh, well, that's not the way we should be doing things here. So it takes time, and you've got to give people that, especially if they've been in a hierarchical organization for a long time, you've got to give them time to adjust. The other thing is mistakes happen. They always happen. They're learning opportunities, and you don't want to be in the mistake prevention business. So I worked for a startup early on in my career in the Silicon Valley, and we had shipped just garbage. I mean, the product didn't work. And so they brought in this guy from IBM, and he brought in his massive IBM process and stuck that on the company. And it was basically a mistake prevention process. And the company spent 2 years and never released a product. And that's just, yeah, that just doesn't work in a startup. So embrace the mistakes, have them in the open, discuss them, and move on. And this last one is really interesting. This is definitely unique to us. In fact, it's so unique to us. I had a friend of mine who went to the website and looked at it and went, fun, you talk about fun too much. That's not very professional. You really shouldn't do that. And I thought, oh God, that just sounds horrible. I guess we're not professional, but we find that when you work on things that you're really passionate about and you're really fired up about, your work is just so much better. And so we always say, if it's not fun, don't do it. You can put it off for a time when you feel inspired to work on it. And so people just do some amazing work at the company because of this. So that's some of the things that we've learned. I'm actually blogging about this. I've written 3 articles thus far. I've got to do another one here soon. And so if you want to read those full articles, they are on my Wavy page. And I appreciate your time today.
Hi, I'm Janie, and I'm with the @Company. I'm excited to speak with y'all today about how the internet can become a more people-centric space. Firstly, to introduce myself, I am a freshman CS student at the University of Texas at Austin, down in Texas, and I actually joined the @Company very recently, in about early September, so it's been about a month. I first got introduced to the @Company and basically just ideas about encryption in general at the 2021 hackathon hosted by the @Company called Fire Attack. It was very centered around like keeping track of secure medical records, and it really allowed me to get like a new perspective on how the medical industry, or like IT in medicine, can be enhanced by things like what the @Company offers. And lastly, I'm very committed to upholding people, putting people first, saying like people rather than users, and empowering people. And I feel like the @Company is really centered around that as well. And that's why I'm really excited to talk to y'all today about what we do and our mission. So I just want to talk about today's internet architecture. Earlier, when I introduced myself, I said that we are trying to make the internet a more people-centric space. So now, why do we say this? Increasingly, and as you can see here, the internet has become a place where people are no longer treated as people, but more as products. People are defined on the internet by various different pieces of data on multiple different platforms, such as phone numbers, social media handles, emails, and addresses, and other things that are just marketing points and pieces of data that corporations or companies can use to basically use you as a business point, right? And it's scattered across, as you can see from this diagram, it's scattered across multiple different areas. And if you really think about it, there's so much data out there about you on so many different platforms. And in the end, none of it really belongs to you. All of these copies of your data are handled and stored by different vendors on different platforms, with different privacy agreements, with different passwords and usernames, and none of it is truly yours. And if you think about it a little further, if anyone were to redesign the internet today, nobody would do it like this. This architecture of how the internet is designed is hugely ineffective. For example, how many places do you have to have information updated about yourself? Like your social data, your shopping data, your banking data, your work data. There are so many copies of your own data out there. If you need to, say, change your home address for something, you would have to fill out countless numbers of forms, update it on countless different platforms. And how would you even be able to accurately reflect this change at the end of the day? At the end of the day, it would be wholly inconsistent and outdated, a representation of you on the internet on multiple different platforms that isn't, again, lastly, is none of yours. Again, none of it is actually your data. And so this is where an @ comes in. And if you look at this, it's a lot less chaotic. And we like to call this flipping the internet. Instead of multiple different sources having data about you, you have your data that you can allow to be accessed by multiple different sources. Again, it's people-centric, and you are the person that owns your own data. Instead of you having to change data, let's say for changing your home address in the previous example, you are empowered yourself to be able to allow permission to share your data as one single source of truth. Simply put, an @ is like your consolidated single internet identity. Instead of having various different copies of your data, again, which is outdated, an @ allows you to represent yourself as just a string at Janie, at Barbara, at Jen, at Anthony, at Luminous Wombat, whatever it may be. And again, most importantly, and I cannot reiterate this enough, you own your own data with an @. You have the ability to store information tied to your @ only and share it only with people that you trust and that you approve of having your data. And now this is wholly different from how the internet is structured today, with your data basically being everywhere in places that you might not even be keeping track of, right? Not only is storing your data with an @ convenient and consistent, at the end of the day, it's safe and more humane. It's people-centric, and it prioritizes your own privacy. Now, let's talk a little bit more about what underlies this @ We call it the platform, and it's a unique architecture where people, again, own their own data, and it's hyper-connected through multiple different apps or different applications where you can transfer your data for different uses. But again, at the end of the day, it's all owned and handled by you as a secondary server. And usually, we can talk a little bit more about this. Like usually when you need to, let's say, plan out an outing with your friends. Let's say in this example that we use on this slide, we are going on a hiking trip with our friends. And usually when you are trying to communicate with other people, you will have different, let's say some people have Android, some people have Apples. That will be a cause of inconsistency. You will have to probably use multiple different things to do multiple different applications, like sharing photos, sharing locations, sharing messages, and that each has its own username and password. And then there are things like file size limitations and areas where, again, you don't really own your own data and you have to just have it out there for everyone to see, and no privacy or nothing of that manner instilled into it. But let's talk a little bit about how this can be changed if we just had everything hyper-connected with apps that are under the app platform. So when you're planning your hiking trip, you will want to talk to people and share data, which is in the form of messages, with, again, people that you trust, that you approve of sharing messages with, and again, only through your @. Let's say you want to take a vote. You can take a vote with a voting application, which again uses your @ to log your vote about where you want to go, what time you want to meet, other logistical things about what your outing is going to entail. And once you actually get there, like the example we used before, you want to share your location with people that you approve of. This is, again, a piece of data about you that you can share with other people only if you are comfortable sharing that and you allow that piece of data to be shared. And again, it's just with your @. And then let's say, and again, these are all hyper connected. So then you can share your location and then chat with them and do all of these things like that you would have needed multiple different platforms for, which would not have been secure in just one area on the app platform. And then at the end of the trip, if you have really nice pictures, then you can share them with the file sharing app like that we have called Atmosphere, again, with your @ and with people that you trust and with people that you're comfortable sharing with. And so this, again, going back to like how we talked about how this would be done in today's world, it would be wholly different with so many different passwords, so many different identification issues, and so many different inconsistencies, and your data being in places that you don't really know where it is. It's just everywhere. So this example ties into kind of how the app protocol encryption works. And simply put, the power behind the app platform lies in apps, which are powered with the app protocol. And a simple layman term definition of this is an internet protocol for the secure exchange of information only between known entities. Now, you've probably heard of end-to-end encryption before. A lot of messaging applications like to proclaim that they are end-to-end encrypted, but at the end of the day, it all goes through the company servers. Let's say, for example, WhatsApp is a really common known end-to-end encryption messaging platform, but all the messages do go through Facebook servers. But end-to-end encryption needs to actually be end-to-end encrypted and people to people. That's what the P2P stands for, person to person, where only the people at the ends can see what is being shared and only they can control who it's being shared to. And just in case, like, you are unfamiliar with how a protocol is encrypted, in this case, the classic Bob and Alice example, we have a message from Bob to Alice saying, how are you, Alice? And if you were to, unless you were at one of the two ends of the receiving or the sending side of this message, you should not be able to see the message. It should be encrypted and then decrypted once it arrives at the destination. And we can talk a little bit more of the intuition behind this and how it works and how it's really different, wholly different from other end-to-end encrypted applications. So with the app platform or the app protocol, you have a primary server, and then each user or each person, we like to say people instead of users, each person is a secondary server. We have @Bob's secondary server and @Alice's secondary server. And let's say, okay, Bob wants to message Alice. So Bob will access the primary server, and this is just to get to the address of Alice, for which he can contact Alice. So then he gets the address from the primary server, but then sends the message through, like, between the secondary servers. It doesn't go to any other cloud, any other external server that is controlled by, let's say, the app company or by any corporation or company. And this just makes it truly end-to-end encrypted. It's truly just seen by Bob and @Alice. But let's say Alice wants to go like, is this actually Bob? We want to make sure it's Bob, so we'll do the same thing. She will do the same thing that Bob did. She will access Bob's address with the primary server, verify that, okay, you are Bob, and then be able to see his message and approve it, decline it, approve it only once, whatever she wants to. The power, again, is with her, whether or not she wants to share her data, and the same with Bob, whether or not he wants to share his data. And this is just between the two of those secondary servers. So just talking a little bit about how this can be applied to the future, our intuition on how this can be applied to the future. When our founders first started the app company, the main motivation was, again, like I said, people, you guys. People who use the internet have been redefined for marketing purposes for far too long, to where it's kind of seen as a norm almost. There is too much of a lack of permission for storing, sharing, and doing whatever you want with people's own data, and not enough advocacy for people as people. It could be something as little as, say, having to always verify that you're not a robot every time you log into something by like clicking pictures of traffic lights or something. Again, people are not seen as people, but they should be, and that's how the internet should be. Our vision of the internet is like kind of what we like to call, as we said before, flipping the internet, having people be empowered on the internet, but also just a little something we like to say is we are internet optimists. We believe that our business model can be centered around that advocacy for individuals and for the internet to become a more humane, and at the end of the day, people having more ownership and empowerment with their own data. And with this, with the people being able to own their own data and have the power to share it with the people that they trust, at the end of the day, after this is done, the internet will be a better place for everyone. And that's kind of our goal here at the company. And I hope you enjoyed hearing about it. Thank you so much.
So thanks everyone for joining us, and I hope you enjoyed those talks. We're definitely recording this, and we'll be sharing this as well as the individual recordings of the talks. For me, they've all been very interesting, and as I said, they will share this to our mailing list. As hope you enjoyed the talks, and we'll see you again next year for Techno Day during International Women's Day.